Take you back now to the National Assembly, where a motion raised by the DA to debate on state capture is currently taking place. Here are the live visuals.
Clearly, it says that unparliamentary or unacceptable language or gesture should not be allowed in this House. To refer to Premier Magashule as corrupt, to refer to Premier Mabuza as they are members by virtue of being premiers. They do come to these houses. Immaterial, but the mere fact to refer to any individual in South Africa as corrupt without any substantiation is unparliamentary.
No.
We will request that that be withdrawn.
Honorable Chairperson. No, Honorable Member, let me first deal with this point of order. Will you take your seat, please? I just want to deal with this point of order.
Can we deal with that quickly?
Honorable Member, I won't be able to deal with it if you are on your feet.
We have to
take your seat. I'll give you a hearing afterwards.
We must take the
Honorable Shavambu, will you take your seat, please?
A quick lesson about the rules of this House.
Take your seat, please.
Please attend to him.
Honorable Shavambu, take your seat, please. Honorable Mtembu, I will look at the Hansard in terms of the context in which this input was made, and then, if necessary, I will rule on the matter. Suffice to say that it is a motion that is being debated, and it's also free for other members who have different views to articulate those views on the matter. Honorable Shavambu.
Honorable Chair, as a matter of fact, there was a ruling in this House, this precedence, this year, when we referred to Supra as a corrupt individual who is stealing money and animals now in the Northwest, that these are not members of this House. They were never sworn in as members of the National Assembly or the National Council of Provinces. There are other means that we can resort to. There's a standing ruling about non-members. You can say anything about them. If they've got recourse, they can pursue that recourse.
No, thank you, Honorable.
Can't be forced to respect corrupt individuals like a Medra David Mabuza, a corrupt
Honorable Member, Honorable Member,
and Super.
Honorable Shavambu,
We can't be forced to do that.
said,
So the chief whip of the ANC
Shavambu,
must respect precedents, must respect the rules
Shavambu,
of this House.
Will you take your seat now? I said I will look into the Hansard, and if necessary. However, I also indicated that this is a debate, and members will have time to articulate their different party positions. Continue, Honorable Mkwena.
And also, Chair, the Honorable Chief Whip of the ANC, if you heard correctly, I said we support this establishment, the establishment of this ad hoc committee to investigate these issues. So the corruptness of Ace Magashule must be dealt with by the ad hoc commission. Thank you very much. We would like them to investigate also the capture of ministers. Minister Zwane, Minister Fikile Mbalula, who has confessed to the fact, Minister Van Rooyen, and many other ministers, of course. They have captured individuals in key state-owned estates, key state-owned entities and individuals. Brian Molefe of Eskom, Jimmy Manye is captured, Dinell is captured, the SAA is captured, and of course, the SABC and its compromised COO, Hlaudi Motsoeneng. These are some of the things that needs to be investigated. Now, it is a known fact that the Gupta used Waterkloof Air Force Base to fly in their private family members for a private wedding, which the president attended. The Gupta family is responsible for the 570 million controversial dairy farm project led by computer sales staff that knew absolutely nothing about dairy farming, and it was signed by Minister Zwane. As a matter of fact, the Gupta have already received 400 million in bribe money to the nuclear deal from the Russians, and they're going to do everything in their power to protect that deal. Other major concerns that we have are major. We are concerned about the state capture, which is more important than any judicial or political issues. The state capture means that we are taking money away from education that we just spoke about now, housing, and many other issues. The Gupta di qetile ANC le ba hlokomele ba tlo le qeta ka 2017 ha le conference le ba hlokomele empa rona we are saying We are still going to come back and investigate other captures by the Ruperts and other people. Thank you very
Honourable
much.
Mokoena, thank you. Your time has now expired. The Honourable Esterhuizen.
Thank you, Chair. The very fact that this House is now seized with a debate of this nature brings to light the stark reality of the poison that's within our midst. The poison that has infiltrated the highest levels of politics and business. The poison which relies on the subversion and convert means to achieve its malignant designs and ends. South Africa appears to be under siege from within. Its highest office appear to be compromised. The question is, who's actually running South Africa? Who's in charge? And what can we, the people, do about it? As elected representatives of the people of the Republic of South Africa, we, the members of this House, have a single and a sacred duty to protect our constitutional democracy, the rule of law, and our public office for the benefit of all South Africans. A creeping rot appears to have taken hold of this government's upper order, a rot which appears to exercise forceful and undue influence through favours, both personal and pecuniary. It's a rot which, if left unchecked, will spread like a cancer and destroy this nation. Honourable Speaker, the time to act is now. The time for decisive leadership through the establishment, I agree, of the mooted Rule 2531A of an ad hoc committee, so as to thoroughly investigate the allegations of state capture and undue influence held by certain individuals over this government. This controversy, this apparent crime against the nation, the rule of law and the people of South Africa must be met. For us to shrink away from such controversy would be criminal. This House must act in the interest of the citizens of this country and not a privileged, connected few. The Nkada Freedom Party supports this motion and calls for the establishment of an ad hoc committee to further investigate this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is Honourable Ngwabe.
Honourable Chairperson, House Chair, honourable members, guests in the gallery. The state capture is a form of corruption. It occurs, and I quote, when the ruling elite and powerful businessmen manipulate policy formation and influence the emerging rules of game, including laws and economic regulations, to their own advantage, unquote. The result of the state capture is that the captured economy becomes trapped in a vicious cycle where the policy and institutional reforms which are necessary to improve governance are undermined by collusion between powerful firms or individuals and state officials who extract substantial private gains from the absence of clear rule of law. There can be no doubt about the current state of our affairs in South Africa. State capture is there, it is obvious, and it is in our face for all to see. The process of state capture is relentlessness, shameless, calculated and single-minded. And the saddest part is that the rise of the House of Gupta was fast-tracked by the greed and callousness of our ruling elite. Those who profess to have best interest of our people at heart, those who held the trust and aspirations of a nation in their greedy hands. However, Chair, I do not want to talk more about the Gupta family because it is alleged that even some in the opposition benches benefited somehow from this family and therefore cannot claim to be innocent. The NFP further believes that the state capture is not a new thing in the government of South Africa. It started way back during Verwoerd's era. The National Freedom Party believes that Bantu education was a result of a state capture by those who wanted to continue enjoying monopoly over key strategic sectors of the economy, including the land, at the expense of the black majority. It will be very, therefore, unstrategic for the ANC to allow itself to fall in the same trap like the apartheid regime leadership. The NFP will therefore not support the establishment of the ad hoc committee, because since it was not established during the apartheid government, when our natural resources were captured, when our land was captured, why now we cannot use the state funds to address issues that were supposed to address long time ago? Let the citizens of South Africa speak on the matter during the 2019 national local government elections.
Honourable Member,
However,
your time
I
is
want
now
to close by
expired.
quoting Archbishop Tutu when he says, ANC government, watch out.
Honourable Member, your time is expired. The next speaker is the Honourable Fultani.
Honourable Speaker and members, may I remind my colleagues on my right what Vladimir Putin said in July 2000 in a meeting with Russia's business leaders, and I quote, "I want to draw attention straight away to the fact that you have yourselves formed this very state to a large extent through political and quasi-political structures under your control. So perhaps one should do what one should do least of all is to blame the mirror." These words are relevant to the ruling party today as they may have been then to that audience. State capture as a form of grand corruption is the most pernicious and intractable problem for our economy, and in particular, given the triple evils facing our country. When private individuals and groups shape laws, policies, and regulations to the taste of their own advantage by providing illicit private gains to the public official, any hope to address the fundamental developmental challenges of the nation are compromised, and the poor is at the losing end. Basic services like electricity, water, socio-economic infrastructure like roads are neglected because there is a big fight about who amongst the captors should be given the tender. This evil is in the eyes of downtrodden person. Because such private individuals and groups use their influence to block any policy reforms that might eliminate their undue advantages, executive and or legislature capture becomes not merely a symptom, but also a fundamental cause for poor governance. When the legislature is captured and the parliamentarians are bribed to take particular decisions and vote on important pieces of legislation according to the whims of the capturer, the legal framework for socio-economic development gets collapsed. In recent months, we have been witnessing a proliferation of media reports about many allegations of a corrupt relationship between the Gupta family and the state, and in particular the executive, and centrally being the state president. Such a corrupt relationship between a private family and senior state officials is shady and a cause of state pillage. Yesterday, a minister of state literally refused to account this house. You can guess for yourself what is happening in his house. Surely, the Gupta family has become a symbol of malaise afflicting our constitutional democracy. In our system of governance, we have corrupt and cronyism as the order of the day. This violates the very tenet of our democracy. As UDM, we shall propose that the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence be charged with detailed investigations of all serious reports and allegations which are already in the public domain. And this is where we want to rest our case. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mulder.
Honourable Chairperson, the debate has become a little bit politicized. So let's step a little bit back and just try to get a little bit of an eagle's eye view on what's happening here. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition gave a definition of what state capture means. Let me just repeat that. It says it's a type of systemic political corruption in which private interests significantly influences a state's decision-making processes to their own advantage. I don't think anybody can disagree with that kind of definition. So that is what state capture is all about. Now, we've heard the allegations being made today in the House in terms of what's happening in the country. We've seen on television, we've witnessed what the papers write. Quite obviously, whether the facts are correct or not, there's a perception out there that South Africa is currently suffering from state capture. Whether we like it or not, there exists facts in that regard, but there's also such a perception. Why on earth is it so difficult for the ANC to do the right thing? I can't understand that. I've become, you know, the reality is what has happened now the last couple of years is you can take any situation and put the facts in front of you. And then what comes up in your mind, what is the right thing to do? And then you go to exactly the opposite. And you know the ANC will be doing that. Why? It's in your own interest. You should be voting for this resolution today. In terms of the proposal, the ANC will have a majority on this ad hoc committee. Aren't you interested in trying to find the facts? You should be interested in finding the facts. In the local government elections, it's quite clear the ANC was punished. People did not like, and you came back and you said yourselves, people perceived the ANC to be arrogant and to not listen to the people. And whether you like it or not, these perceptions are out there. Here is an opportunity for the ANC to do the right thing. Appoint such an ad hoc committee, investigate. If you've got other examples of things that went wrong, let's put it in front of that committee and come to the conclusion. We all know that the ANC had its own internal process where the Secretary General Montashe was involved. 8 complainants. In the end, it was only one person, Mr. Themba Maseko, who took an affidavit there. But we know about what Deputy Minister Jonas said. We know what Faiki Mentor said. These perceptions and facts are out there, and we all know that they're out there. Why don't you start by doing the right thing? Why will you oppose a commission like this, an ad hoc committee like this? By doing that, you are sending one example out there that you are trying to protect the people that are accused. You are trying to protect state capture. You are doing that not only to the detriment of your own party, you're doing that to the detriment of South Africa. Please wake up and do the right thing once. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Madisha.
Our hard fought for liberation was based on the democratic mantra, government of the people, by the people, for the people. Corruption and state capture destroyed the notion of democracy. In state capture, government no longer represents government by the people, for the people, but rather government by a few for their own benefit at the expense of the people. When we think of state capture, in our context, we think of President Zuma, we think of corruption and the Guptas. But state capture in the South African context is much more endemic. This very parliament has been captured. Yesterday, when the captured minister, Zwane, was asked to account, the Speaker and the ANC in this House either protected him or did not denounce his actions. It means that not only has the President, his executive, and many state departments and SOEs have been captured, but so too has this parliament. This endemic state capture is not limited to President Zuma, the Guptas, and state capture at the national level. The fact of the matter is that South Africa has morphed into a mafia state from top to bottom, with President Zuma and the Guptas sitting at the apex of a pyramid. Similar, President Zuma and Gupta relationships with other role players exist, and rather in almost every province and municipality under the control of the ANC across the entire nation. As cases of corruption are opened in Johannesburg, in Tshwane, in Nelson Mandela Bay municipalities, which are now under coalition governance, we are beginning to see the extent of the state capture and grand corruption. Minister Gordhan was clear yesterday when he said, in quote, the facts are clear about where influences lie and who influences whom. It is clear that a small group is being advantaged to the disadvantage of more than 55 million
your time is
people.
now expired.
And a lot has got to be done to make sure that the working class and the poor, for example, those who are outside, are looked after.
Your time is expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is the Honourable Swart.
Thank you, Chairperson. The ACDP will support this motion. South Africa has undeniably reached a critical point, and there is an epic battle within the governing ANC which has split the government. Even Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa has described this as a government at war with itself. The conflict between the Finance Minister and the Hawks is a symptom of this battle, and the whole nation is seized with discussing the ramifications of whether the Finance Minister will survive or succumb to the onslaught of the dark forces of state capture. Yesterday, Minister Gordon said in this House that the facts are very clear as to where the influences are, to advantage certain groups of people to the disadvantage of 55 million people. And this is an issue which we should be very seriously concerned about. The South African captors are clearly the wealthy Gupta family. Their capture is so deep that they even had the gumption to offer Finance Minister Nahlanhla Nene's job to his deputy, Minister Jonas. This startling revelation by the Deputy Minister was followed by other statements by former ANC MP Faiki Mentor and former Cabinet Minister Barbara Hogan, who also told of attempts to undo influence by the Gupta family. Remember what Deputy Minister Jonas said in his statement. The narrative that has grown around the issue of state capture should be of concern to all responsible and caring South Africans, particularly those of us who have accepted the task to lead our people. That is us sitting in this House. Yet nothing has been done following those startling revelations. Instead, the battle intensifies. And there's a new onslaught now against the banking sector and the Reserve Bank, and the disgraceful scenes we saw yesterday in this House with the lack of accountability. We know the economy is on a knife edge, with an almost negative growth rate, a loss of investor confidence, and a looming sovereign credit rate downgrade. The ANC has not heeded the warning sent by the voters, and we see now international investors and credit rating agencies are now sending an even stronger warning that we ignore at our own peril. One way of getting rid of patronage politicians and supporters is by exposing them through the political process. And that is the reason why this resolution should be supported. Chairperson, I have no doubt that there are sufficient members within the ANC who recognize the dangers of the current situation of state capture and who wish to bring it to an end. And I join the pleas of the Honourable Corne Mulder. Stand up and do what is right. What is needed now is a resurgence of moral vitality, personal resolve, and courage. Now is the time to stand up and do what is right. Shakespeare wrote, "There's a tide in the affairs of men, which, when taken at its flood, leads on to victory. The tide is rising. There's a clarion call against state capture and against widespread fraud and corruption. Let us deal with state capture and the Guptas once and for all." I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mazzoni.
Thank you, House Chair. The politicisation of state entities by the deployment of cadres has become a growing trend that afflicts our state-owned entities, which only further serves to compound the financial pressures experienced in these sectors for self-interest. South Africa's SOEs are in a dire state, costing the country billions of rand, and only the South African people suffer. At the root of their mismanagement is the large-scale corruption that feeds an ANC patronage network headed up by no one other than President Jacob Zuma. A constant veil of secrecy, hidden agendas, scandals, and general distrust hang over our state-owned entities. In response to my parliamentary question, Minister of Public Enterprises Lynn Brown has indicated that the content flowing from the procurement process for all of Eskom's new build programs will not be made public. The Minister indicated that while high-level procurement processes and information will be available upon request, procurement content information, however, which includes tender submissions, contracts, and of course pricing, is confidential. The decision by the Minister severely compromises the transparency of the procurement process and leaves the door for wide-scale corruption open, and not to mention political interference. This does not bode well for the growing perception that South Africa's state-owned enterprises have become politically captured by the ANC in a bid to plunder their coffers. There is a long history of irregularities in the awarding of Eskom tenders, including the alleged involvement of ANC's Chancellor House in helping Hitachi to secure contracts in the construction of Medupi, as well as Eskom's irrational decision to award a 4 billion rand tender to Arriva over the preferred bidder, Westinghouse, citing strategic considerations, a decision that was later overturned by the Supreme Court of Appeal. Denel is now caught up in yet another scandal. VR Laser, Gupta's associates, and a full-on fight between DPE and Treasury is on the go. The DA requested an open and honest meeting for the portfolio of public enterprises. We requested the attendance of National Treasury, Department of Public Enterprise, the Denel Board, the previous Denel Board, and most importantly, the ministers of both public enterprises and finance. We arrived for the meeting hoping that finally South Africa would get the answers to much-needed questions that plague these SOEs. This, however, was too much to hope for. We were informed by the portfolio chairperson that Parliament had not granted permission for ex-board members to attend, even though the rules of Parliament make provision for this. And we were told that Treasury had other commitments and the ministers were in a cabinet meeting. Yet another attempt at a cover-up, another attempt to sweep issues under the carpet, and I'm here today to tell you, not on our watch. Treasury has allegedly issued legal letters to Denel demanding that it scrap the much-maligned venture between Denel Asia and the Gupta-linked VR Laser Asia. According to reports, Treasury is ready to go to court to stop this deal. We will not allow President Zuma to centralize power around himself and influence decisions concerning public money at public institutions, as his track record for self-enrichment points to the gross abuse of power. The DA believes that the people of South Africa must always come first, and decisions regarding public institutions cannot be centralized by the President, especially whilst the majority of these institutions are underperforming. This far, but no further. It's time to take our institutions back.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mantashe.
House Chairperson, Honourable Members, our guests in the gallery, fellow South Africans, good afternoon. I want to declare up front that the ANC is not pro any person who is corrupt or any institution that is corrupt. But our belief is that there are institutions that are given that authority to investigate corrupt activities. And therefore, this Parliament has no reason to investigate. There are institutions to do that. This wrongly worded motion for debate should be more correctly entitled Ongoing Attempts by Corporates to Get the State to Serve Their Own Interests. Put another way, corporate capture of the state. It is, of course, very rich for this motion to be coming from the DA, the architects of corporate capture of the state. So, where does it begin? In the 1940s, Ed Miliband Sr., a long-serving member of the Labour Party in England, wrote a book on how capital, through its influence, seeks to gain hegemony over politicians, influence the character and content of draft of legislation by tie up individuals in the ruling party and corruptly use money and property to influence political direction, policy, and resolution of a governing party. He went on to describe that the captains of monopoly capital have no interest in becoming office bearers or MPs or MPLs or councillors, an occupation they consider too unstable and short-lived. Rather, their intention is to work behind the scenes, using front runners to do their corrupt work of attempting to get control over the policy and ultimately legislative direction of the governing party. The sponsors of this resolution, the DA, know this very well, since their backers are hard at work, doing precisely what Miliband described. So, what is the ultimate intention? As in this case, in countries like the United States, an entire country can go to war in order to feed the material interests of monopoly capital, who, after the war is over, the weapons of which were purchased from them, their associates on the construction sector are given contracts to rebuild the cities that they have destroyed, knowing fully well that the financial beneficiaries themselves, a governing party, will sacrifice its citizens under spurious allegations so that they materially benefit. The ANC is well aware that corporate capture of the state is alive, and well, its ideology is neoliberalism, a descendant from the colonial period. It seeks to corporatize the state and render its citizens to the mercy of unbridled monopoly capital. This is DA economy policy they try to disguise with notions of a free and open opportunity society. Its intentions is to strip power away from the state and place it in the hands of the property class, your bourgeoisie. Tomorrow in Bramwell Road, Salt River, Cape Town, 26 families will be dumped on the streets as the gratification of working class areas continues unabated across the city. Often at the behest of expatriate capital. No low-cost housing here, no poor families here, just the interests of corporates successfully buying their way across a city with the help of state property being sold to the highest bidder. These families who have lived in these streets since 1930s are today being told to go to Delft because, quote, there is no low-cost housing in the CBD. Of course, there would be not in Cape Town. What kind of society we will end up with if this is how we are going to sell off state property? This motion is about a family and its perceived
honourable members.
or real attempts
Honourable
to have...
Chairperson,
Honourable Mantash, can you take your seat?
Is the Honourable Mantash willing to take a question on the point she's just made?
Honourable Mantash, are you willing to take a question?
She clearly has no idea what she's talking
Honourable
about.
member, if you ask if the member is prepared
Will
to
she
take a question, then you wait for a reply.
I'll
Honourable
gladly take
Mantash.
the question after I've finished my input. Thank
I'll
you.
hold
Thank
you
you.
to that.
This motion is about a family and its perceived or real attempts to have hegemony over the decisions of the governing party. This dishonesty of this resolution is that it does not address the fact that the family is merely a reflection of many others who are trying to do exactly the same thing, many of whom are the backers of the DA. If you are to be ethical and honest, open up all these connections. Don't just opportunistically seek to focus on the most obvious when your own intentions are to get your hands on state silver and deliver it to the corporates. The sponsors of this motion have not hidden this. Even their new mayors are, as Miliband put it, serving the interests of monopoly capital. They are a front for monopoly capital. Those with integrity and the sponsors of this motion have none need to analyze more accurately what it means to defend our democratic national sovereignty from the corrupt hands of corporate capital. The strategic and complex manner in which capital and their agents undermine the democratic mandate of the majority must be arrested. If not, what is under dire threat, as the Constitution of South Africa puts it so well, that the will of the majority must prevail. To reduce the real danger to one family is disingenuous and merely seeks to hide other ventures that are underway. To treat corporates as monolithic would equally be wrong. However, what is completely wrong is a form of corporate behavior that is entirely parasitic on the state for its wealth accumulation. They stand against the ANC's developmental state approach, unlike the sponsors of this motion, whose ideology of neoliberalism drives their obnoxious lust for the breaking up of state-owned enterprises to feed monopoly capital, change the character of the state, and render the governing party impotent. So where does the ANC stand? The intensification of ANC economic policies interventions is based on the following pillars. Pillar number 1, uniting all South Africans around the NDP to promote growth and development and eradicate the triple scourge of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. The second one is state-led infrastructure investment aimed massively improving social and economic infrastructure with an emphasis on the use of local content and local companies. Pillar 3, the successful implementation of the strategies to give effect to the NDP, including the new growth path and the industrial policy action plan aimed at stimulating growth, employment, and the reindustrialization of the South African economy. Pillar 4, transforming the mining sector. Pillar 5, promoting youth employment, small business, and cooperatives. Pillar 6, building a developmental state with the technical and political capacity to lead development and transforming the economy. Pillar 7, a supportive macroeconomic policy framework orientated towards reconstruction, growth, and development, and informed by the imperatives of sustainability and long-run macroeconomic stability. In short, what the ANC conceptualizes as the radical socio-economic phase of the national democratic revolution is the best guardian of preventing corporate capture of the state. It is the best guardian of the will of the majority, whose mandate to the governing party, the ANC, is one that is pro-poor, tackling poverty, unemployment, and inequality, that reflects proportionality and prioritization in allocation of funding against ANC policy and constitutional requirements, that reflects an equitable sharing of resources and addresses issues of equity in relation to class, race, and gender. Finally, let us address the consciously misplaced and dislocated conceptualization of oversight by the sponsors of this motion. Theirs is to go after an individual at the behest of their corporate backers, so as to dislodge an individual in favor of another individual who, if that individual does not favorably respond to the interests of corporate capture, the same process to dislodge that individual will start all over again in the corrupt desire of corporate capture of the state and the dislodgement of the African National Congress in the process, so that a new bidder can be installed and the nation's assets auctioned to the highest bidder. What makes it worse is that it is happening right in front of us, dressed up as parliamentary oversight. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next
Sorry,
speaker...
Chair, wasn't the member going to take a question from
No,
me?
the member's time is expired, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Gallo.
Thank you very much, Chair of Chairs, or Chair of the House. Parliament's strategic vision is to build an effective people's parliament that is responsive to the needs of the people, and that is driven by the ideal of realizing a better quality of life for all the people of South Africa. And its mission is to represent and act as the voice of the people in fulfilling Parliament's constitutional mandate of passing laws and overseeing executive action. Tax team on oversight and accountability. The above quotation focusing on the vision and mission for Parliament is taken from a parliamentary report on oversight and accountability written in 2009. It is a powerful statement, and if it were to be realized and put into practice, it would transform the current Parliament. Regrettably, in 2014, this dream of a people's parliament has yet to come into effect. What's gone wrong? On the brink of a failed state, by Alex Borain, Chapter 4, People's Parliament, page 59. Perhaps, Honorable Chair, we really need to come to our senses and agree to the fact that our so-called constitutional democracy was not founded on a solid foundation. It does not need a rocket scientist to establish that shortcomings and challenges we are facing today in our beloved country are as a result of the compromises made during the multi-party negotiations in World Trade Center. That's where the struggle for freedom was sold on a silver platter by lumpen politicians. Therefore, the allegations of state capture by certain individuals and their alleged undue influence over the government are not surprising in our view as AIC. In fact, they are a confirmation of reality that the country was sold long ago. As I conclude, the fundamental question that we need to ask ourselves as public representatives, what is it that we must do as a collective to save our beloved country from this situation? The answer, as far as the AIC is concerned, is electoral reform through the transferring of power to the hands of the people. The people of South Africa are ready to govern. Let us do away with these silly political interest groups and give the power to the people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Pluama.
Honourable Chair, the question we need to ask is what happened to freedom fighters who chose their stomach using public office to enrich themselves? Honourable members, it's public knowledge that our Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa is in the pockets of white monopoly. It's not only our president who's captured. Actually, the Guptas are late entrants. The Guptas have learned the game from the Ruperts, the Oppenheimers, who were beneficiaries of contracts even during apartheid. But the question should be, who is capturing these honorable men and women? I mean, look at how even the communist, so-called socialists are not surviving the onslaught. They can't swim. The Minister of Public Works, the communist, presided over Nkandla. The least said about the Minister of Education, Mr. Blaidin Nzimande, who's a communist / Mercedes-Benz. Honorable Chair, as long as the power relations of colonialism and capitalism remains intact, this government will continue to be discredited and mistrusted. The upward mobility and accumulation offered by the capture of the state is a true incentive of the bourgeoisie, kleptocracy. We need to change the structure of this capitalist economy and change it once for all. Honorable Chair, it is the attitude of capitalism to always try to tame ruling governments in Africa by threatening disinvestment, or they must accept bribes of any kind. The question we need to ask ourselves is why very intelligent ministers like Menaledi Panda are keeping quiet. Are they washing their hands like Chief Kim Pilato? How do they sleep at night? Honorable Chairperson, even the opposition is not safe from being captured. We know that Ruperts and other mining cartels are fighting to keep their contracts while the ruling party is now giving them to the east of the world. We must take over our natural resources and give them to our people, instead of the black elite, which is direct descendants of white monopoly. In the end, it's not the state capture, it's South Africa that is captured through intermediaries and puppets. I thank you.
Honorable Lozipo.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Accept my apology. I've got a bit of flu, but I have no choice. The honorable members of the House, first I must say that the topic here today is quite a critical but a bit problematic one at the same time. We in the African National Congress always appreciate political and polemic engagement as they continue to sharpen our theoretical tools of analysis. Comrade Chris Ane once stated that in the ANC we do not fear political debates or engagements. Instead, we welcome them as they provide us with an opportunity to expose the political bankrupts of our political opponents. The reason why I made this assertion is that the topic is a bit problematic because state capture cannot be presented as an apolitical concept. The sponsor of this motion surely should and must assist in laying the fundamental base of the motion as to what is its ideological base for such a narrative. The state, by its own name, its scientific and historical description, has never been and is still not class neutral. One would highly appreciate if this debate was based on genuine ideological or at worst political determination, not on political innuendos that are more flouted on emotions and are without any ideological grounding. The state, in its scientific definition, especially those who claim to be using Marxist-Leninist tools of analysis, even in any way in the liberal definition of the state, it is not just the simplification of the phenomenon, as there is a recognition that there are three main components of the state, that is the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. How do you then base an argument that has no fundamental foundation at all in relation to the topical issue? The problem is that the South African political landscape is full of political hyenas and ideological demagogues masquerading as political messiahs, exploiting every little opportunity to have a genuine debate in the public discourse for their narrow vulturist interest. The issue of state capture is a product of internal discussions within the movement as a whole about the dangers, the threats and challenges that may derail the advancement of the national democratic revolution. The ANC and the entire Congress movement has not exhausted this debate, and therefore we cannot hide and be shy to state that there is nothing conclusive as yet. For some political and ideological bloodthirsty vampires, to make this as theirs is nothing but a demonstration of dishonest of the highest proportion. It is only in the ANC where such debates are seen as a contribution to the festival of ideas. It is completely and absolutely disingenuous to present this as though it did not emerge within the ranks of the African National Congress, of which the intention could be nothing else but to try and divide the people's movement and to appropriate what such elements believe will benefit their narrow political interest, if they've got any interest anyway. At the center of this discussion, if genuine, would be whether the ANC, by itself as a liberation movement, has state power or is a party in power. The state, as stated before, is an instrument by its very historical class identification, an instrument of class rule. And therefore, in South Africa, it is primarily represented by white monopoly capital, which is predominantly male. It is in this context that we must understand the task of the ANC as the liberation movement, which is the liberation of blacks in general and Africans in particular. Is it not ironic and politically dishonest that with the same mouth which condemns the mere talk of a judicial commission of inquiry on the conduct of financial institutions, there is also a demand on the other side for the establishment of a parliamentary committee to investigate the allegation of state capture. This is hypocrisy of the highest order. What we might have to consider to investigate, in fact, is the imperialist capture of the political demagogues who dine with the international capital by night and stand side by side with the masses during the day. State capture remains a true threat as long as there are those who were embracing President Mugabe yesterday, then go on to dine with international capital to denounce President Nelson Mandela as a sellout and as someone who betrayed the South African Revolution. State capture will and remains a serious threat as long as poor parental workmanship is equated with militance and vigilance. Political hooliganism and liberal brinkmanship are a deadly combination, and we are beginning to see them now. As the ANC, we see no reason to have a parliamentary committee on a matter that has no foundation in law. We remain capable to handle such ideological questions with the processes of policy development in order to move South Africa forward. Now, let me try and assist honorable members. Honorable Steniers, and don't worry, let me attend to you now. Honorable Maimani, I appreciate you, but let me start with this thing from the church. The biggest problem that we can do, mangaba single pastor, ukuphakamisa amehlo wethu siwabhekise ezantsi la mkholo wethu uzoqhamuka khona. Now, the most important thing, you can't stand here and say, all of you, when I listen to them, I could see potential witnesses in a court of law. Now, you can't abdicate the responsibility of policy formulation and want to take on somebody's duty. There are institutions that were established in order to deal with issues of corruption and maladministration. Now, Parliament's responsibility cannot supersede that one. You can't take a responsibility to investigate. The problem is that when you read, the biggest problem, when you read, unfortunately, you are reading something that you can't see in front of you, but something that somebody is telling you behind your ears. Now, if Parliament were to do anything genuine, Parliament can only consider making it possible for institutions that are created to deal with matters of this nature and be able to report back to Parliament, not to reduce Parliament into an investigation tool when you've got many things that you said you can do here. And therefore, I will deal with other issues. I've never seen this. You make a proposal for a debate and an establishment, but already you have got conclusion of what is happening. What is the basis of the investigation? Because already you have done conclusion. We have established, since I've come here, since I came here in 2014, Honorable my man stood up here and said, let's establish a commission on Nkandla. What happened after that? You came with a separate report from the report of the committee that you had requested Parliament to do. We will not be surprised even on this one, even if you were to win on this one. We will not be surprised that you will again come up with your own report separate from what you have requested. And therefore, who is wasting time of Parliament? If you know well that you've got answers. Why don't you write your report even before that committee can take place? Because already you know you are not going to agree even with the outcomes of that committee. That is the experience that we've seen here, where every time you propose a committee, when the results of that committee don't favor you, you blame people to be taking instructions from somewhere else, as if the Constitution of South Africa, that you cannot present yourselves as the better people who will understand it better than anyone. So, Honorable Chairperson, as long as this motion is drafted in the manner it is drafted, as the African National Congress, we will not support it. Thank you very much.
Honorable Menir.
Now, Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Member asks who is wasting Parliament's time. Well, it's obvious. It's that member who had the courage to come to this podium and talk about vampires, but did not have the courage to tell us who those vampires were. And those vampires, of course, are the Guptas. And what that Honourable Member knows is that the Guptas are feeding off his party, the ANC. Now, Deputy Speaker, it was remiss of me not to mention the statement made by the Honourable Member who sits behind the Ambassador from Saxonwold, the Honourable Jeremy Cronin, whose party made a statement earlier this week on state capture, which read that such wasteful things must come to an end. And so we hope that the Honourable Member will share his views with the Ambassador from Saxonwold and consider supporting our motion. We should not forget, Speaker, that the last time that the Guptas were in Parliament, they were guests of President Jacob Zuma. We should ensure that the next time the Guptas are guests in Parliament, they are guests of an ad hoc committee established to investigate allegations against them. The Honourable Member is absolutely wrong. We do have investigation tools. We are not powerless. We have powers to summon any person. We have powers to require any person or institution to report to Parliament. And so let's use those powers to stand up to state capture and establish an ad hoc committee to investigate allegations of state capture. And so I hereby move the motion set out on the order paper today in Parliament. I thank you.
That concludes the debate. I now put the motion. Are there any objections?
Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Member.
The rules of this House do provide for an amendment to the motion. And we would like to propose such an amendment to this motion.
Okay. If that be the case, please...
Is Rule 121?
Give us voices up on the rule.
Thank you. Rule 121, sub-rule 2 does give us such an opportunity to make an amendment. Deputy Speaker, I would like to read the amendment. The motion in the name of Honourable Member Menir reads, 1, that the House notes that the allegations of state capture by certain individuals and their alleged undue influence over the government. Under the amended version, this one stands. 2, established an ad hoc committee in terms of Rule 25.3.1a, the committee 2, under all that under 2, we want that replaced with the following. 2, refer all such allegations of state capture to the Police Service of South Africa or Chapter 9 institutions for investigations, including the Public Protector. 3, all parties and individual members of parliament with evidence of such alleged state capture should make available such evidence to the police or such Chapter 9 institution. 4, such investigations by either the police service or a Chapter 9 institution should culminate in prosecutions of all individuals or companies engaged in such state capture if such proved as a criminal activity. I so move.
House Deputy Speaker.
Can I respond to that first?
Well, I would just like to make a point of order in terms of the amendment, which I believe is outside the rules.
What is your point of order?
I'd like to address you in terms of Rule 1211.
Yes. Yes.
It says very clearly that, that it is possible to move an amendment to a draft resolution, provided, and this is the important part, the amendment does not extend the scope of the draft resolution. It's very clear that what the Honourable Chief Whip of the majority party is attempting to do is move the scope of this amendment outside of Parliament's ability and onto state security agencies who report to the executive. I would submit to you that that is an overreach for an amendment to a draft resolution, and that the Chief Whip of the majority party's motion to amend must fall aside because it falls foul of Rule 121. I'd ask your ruling on this.
Honourable Chief Whip, there's a suggestion that your motion may be falling outside of the scope of the motion. What's your reaction to that?
Deputy Speaker, on a point of order. Deputy Speaker, on a point of order.
We have
it's to do with...
We have asked people to check that out. We're coming back.
But you can't ask the Chief Whip of the ANC what his point of view is. You must make a ruling. You're the presiding officer, not the Tuli House. Why don't you ask the ANC to come and take your chair?
In writing. Yes. I will make a ruling, obviously. And the ruling must be informed, Honourable Waters. Yes. Honourable Chief Whip, did we have a printed version of this? Can we have that?
Honourable Deputy Speaker, you do have a written and signed version as required by our rules of the amended motion. Just in response to the members, by the way, you... The public protector doesn't report to the executive. Chapter 9 institutions do not report to the executive. They are institutions tasked with supporting our democracy.
Honourable members, I'm getting the record of this motion. I don't have it before me, because I want to be able to make this ruling that you're asking me. In the meantime, you've got 2 minutes stretching time.
But Deputy Speaker,
I've adjourned the meeting for 2 minutes.
But I was raising my hand. How do you adjourn the meeting when I'm raising my hand? You're not serious. What kind of a person is this?
No,
Well, live visuals on the debate of state capture. Now, this motion was tabled by the DA, and we've just seen that debate live from the National Assembly. Well, MPs feel that one family shouldn't hold so much power over government. However, some allege that it's not a new thing, and that in some rather in the opposition benches have also benefited in these means. They say that state capture equates to poor service delivery as well as poor governance. The ANC said they are well aware that individual capture is alive, and also pointed out that those making noise about monopoly capital are indeed a front for that monopoly capital. They believe that whichever individual is captured should be arrested. The MPs said they, as politicians, should ask themselves what to do to give back the power to the people. But they said that these allegations confirm the fact that the country was sold long ago. The ANC agreed that this is a critical matter, but it's also a tricky topic because state capture cannot be made based on political innuendos, but rather on profound basis. They said this topic was merely brought up based on internal debates to disregard some in government, also adding that this debate was brought up within the ruling party. They also said there are relevant bodies set up to investigate corruption and that Parliament isn't the place to investigate such matters. And ANC Chief Whip, as we've just seen there, Jackson Mthembu, just moved to make several amendments to the motion, particularly the fact that on these issues, Chapter 9 institutions and the police are the relevant bodies to take their grievances to. And while doing so, they should bring about relevant proof for speedy resolutions. And of course, the DA objected to this. The House has just adjourned for 2 minutes while a ruling is to be concluded.